An endless blue sky stretches across the horizon, illuminating the dense forest and woodland areas of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's late in summer 2008. The weather is warm and inviting, and the park is bustling with wildlife and human visitors keen to experience the scenic hiking trails and mountain views. At the edge of the park, a man leaves his family's farmhouse straddling an ATV. He waves at his neighbors as he passes, excited at the prospect of spending the day outdoors. But 2 days later, he has still not returned to the farm. The discovery of his ATV only deepens the mystery, and questions begin to emerge about whether he may have happened upon a scene he should not have witnessed. What began as a beautiful, atmospheric day at the park is darkened by the mysterious disappearance, which remains unsolved 14 years later. This is the story of the day Mike Hearon vanished into thin air, and about a family's fight to answer a question that has plagued their lives for over a decade. The allure of the Great Smoky Mountains. The Great Smoky Mountains is a huge, beautiful mountain range that straddles the border between North Carolina and Tennessee. The range plays host to some of the tallest mountains in America, as well as featuring the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, an enormous protected area approximately 520,000 acres large. Hundreds of miles of backcountry trails, popular with hikers and explorers, weave across the landscape like veins. 70 miles of the Appalachian Trail, reported to be the world's longest hiking-only route, go through the park. In 2021, around 14 million people visited the area to explore its trails and dense forests, which offer excellent and secluded camping opportunities. Such popularity makes it the most visited national park in the United States. Despite its beauty, it also holds many secrets beneath the canopy of its trees, including what happened during Mike Hearon's strange disappearance 14 years ago. A hard-working, lovable outdoorsman. Mike Hearon was 51 years old at the time of his disappearance in 2008. He was born and raised in East Tennessee and had an expansive family surrounding him who lived in the nearby area. Mike had 2 grown sons, Andy and Matt, who worked for their father at his local construction business. Both men have described their father as being very animated, whose laughter was loud and obvious and paired with a huge smile that could brighten anybody's day. Mike's friends agree with such descriptions, adding that Mike was very sociable and could get along with everybody. They also note that Mike enjoyed his life and spent large amounts of time outdoors. Furthermore, Matt has also said that his father worked exceptionally hard to build his business from nothing. Mike also had a penchant for riding ATVs and motorcycles and owned a stock of vehicles. From all accounts provided, it appears that Mike was a thoroughly pleasant and warm man. The Hearon family also owned a 100-acre farm in Happy Valley, which straddles the outskirts of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Mike did not live at the property. He owned a personal condo nearby in Maryville that he stayed at most weekdays, but he would frequently visit to attend to the surrounding grounds. It is here where the story of Mike's strange disappearance begins. The late summer weekend when Mike disappeared. On Saturday, the 23rd of August, 2008, at around 9:30 a.m., Andy Hearon received a phone call from his father. Mike stated that he was planning to visit the family farm in Happy Valley and mow some tall, unkempt grass that had accumulated on a neighboring property owned by missionaries that were out of town. To do so, he needed a lawnmower and trailer that was at Andy's house and wanted permission to collect them. Andy agreed, and the call was finished. Immediately before calling Andy, Mike tried to reach Matt, his other son, but left a voicemail instead. Matt later recalled his father reiterating that he was planning to spend the weekend at the farm and that there was nothing noticeably odd about the message his father had left. With his son's permission, Mike collected the lawnmower and trailer from Andy's property, attached them to his vehicle, and left in the direction of the farm. Mike and Andy drove by each other on the street, their encounter entirely normal. At 11 a.m., neighbors reported witnessing Mike arriving at the farmhouse in Happy Valley in a vehicle with an attached trailer. Mike had successfully made the trip to the farmhouse as planned. Shortly afterwards, 2 other neighbors spotted Mike leaving the property atop an ATV. He waved as he passed them, going in the direction of the nearby woods. His demeanor was normal, yet this would be the last time Mike was seen alive. For the remainder of the day, both Andy and Matt did not hear from their father. But this was not unusual. They did not always speak every day, and so the pair assumed Mike would either return the trailer when he was finished or that they would see him on Monday morning at work. As we know, this would sadly not be the case. The next day, on Sunday the 24th of August, Mike had still not contacted anyone in the family. His mother, Alma, began to grow concerned and called Matt around 2 p.m. She asked if either of the brothers had heard from their father. Both said they had not. Alma also stated that she and her husband, Mike's father, had visited the house earlier in the day but received no response when they knocked on the door. They observed the truck and still unloaded lawnmower sitting in the driveway. Mike, however, was nowhere to be found. Despite her concerns, both brothers reassured their grandmother that Mike was likely fine. After all, he often went off to work on projects away from the farm, and the area was known for its poor cell service. If he had gone off, he would be unable to get in touch. Plus, he had intricate knowledge of the surrounding woodland, having grown up playing in them and later working as a park ranger. It was very unlikely Mike had gotten lost and needed rescue. Both Matt and Andy had no concerns for their father's safety and promptly assuaged their grandmother's fears. When Mike still hadn't returned the next day, however, events began to quickly unfold. At 8:30 a.m., Alma called Matt and Andy in a panic state. She still hadn't heard from Mike and had become convinced that something terrible had happened. Since 2 days had passed and Mike had not turned up to work that morning, both brothers decided to try and find their missing father. They visited Mike's condo in Maryville, which he stayed in most weeknights. They did not find anything unusual outside the property or inside. Mike's bed had been made and all lights were switched off. However, all of Mike's vehicles were still inside the garage, including his Mercedes, convertible, and Harley. Wherever Mike was, he was clearly still in his truck. Having finished at the condo, Matt and Andy headed off to the family farm to join their grandmother in the search. Before the pair arrived, Alma called them to state that she had found a four-wheel vehicle in the front yard and that Mike's truck was parked by the house with the trailer still attached. Its windows were rolled down as though it had been temporarily parked. When the brothers arrived at the farmhouse, they inspected the vehicle themselves. The windows were indeed rolled down and the doors were unlocked. They found Mike's keys, ID, a small amount of cash, and his cell phone laying in the front seat. But that wasn't all. How the truck had been positioned was unusual. Mike had a habit of moving his truck out of the way to allow a local school bus to park on the property on weekday mornings. The position of the truck as found by the pair would not have permitted the bus to have come onto the property. How it had been left was considered uncharacteristic and odd. The brothers also found an ATV sitting on the property. Mike had recently purchased a new ATV, but it was the old one that now lay before them. The old ATV was later determined not to have been the same one the neighbors had seen Mike riding on Saturday, indicating he had departed on the new vehicle, which was missing. Concerns quickly grew that Mike may have been gravely injured, leading the pair to alert close family members to their father's disappearance at around noon on Monday the 25th of August. Jerry Hearon, Mike's brother, learned of his disappearance at this time and agreed with his nephew's concerns that Mike could be injured somewhere. Mike had slightly elevated blood pressure but was known to otherwise be in good health, so there were no immediate concerns for his well-being. But if he had wrecked the ATV or fallen from the vehicle, he may have needed help. Intent on finding their father, Matt and Andy repaired a tire on the old ATV and headed out to scout the surrounding property. They rode along the main trails and inspected the neighboring property that Mike had wanted to maintain. However, there were no signs that the grass had been trimmed as planned. The brothers continued their search along more nearby trails and campgrounds inside the national park, but they still could not find any sign of their father's whereabouts. With their concerns growing by the minute and fearing the worst, they informed the police of Mike's disappearance at around 4 p.m. Not long afterwards, the Blount County Sheriff's Office descended on the property to determine what exactly had happened to Mike Hearon. The discovery of the missing ATV. Officers arrived at the property at around 6 p.m. Monday evening. They began their preliminary investigation of the scene, but several issues were immediately apparent. By the time they arrived, it had already begun to get dark, which hindered the initial search efforts. The weather also turned against them. Pouring rain slammed against the earth, threatening to wash away any evidence or tracks that may have been present. A tracking dog was used to try to pick up on Mike's scent, but the rain was making it difficult. Similar issues would arise over the preceding days as the relentless rain continued almost constantly for the next 3 days. On Tuesday, the 26th of August, the sheriff's office officially launched the formal search for Mike Hearon. They implored the help of local media and asked the public to be vigilant for signs of Mike and his missing ATV. A description of him was distributed, highlighting the fact that he was last seen wearing a faded red t-shirt, khaki cargo shorts, and sandals. Mike had also had an appendectomy scar on his abdomen, another surgical scar on the back of his knee, and caps on his teeth. But despite the description provided, no information on Mike's whereabouts could be gathered. Also, 2 unfortunate issues had potentially impeded the investigation from the beginning: the aforementioned inclement weather, which continued unabated, and the fact that Mike's family had sadly delayed reporting his disappearance for 2 days. Nevertheless, the search for Mike would continue. Independent search parties were established to painstakingly examine the surrounding areas. Mike's next-door neighbor, 80-year-old Grady Whitehead, volunteered to lead some of the search teams. Whitehead had been a park ranger for decades and therefore had a reputation for being an excellent tracker. His wife would later state that Whitehead was fiercely passionate about finding Mike, often being the first one out and the last to return. Mike's sons also joined in with the search efforts, which covered a huge 500-acre area. Helicopters, drones, dogs, and even citizens on horseback hunted for signs of Mike's whereabouts. 2 ponds on the family's property were dragged by divers in the event that Mike may have inadvertently fallen in and drowned. At first, the search teams were fruitless in their endeavors, but that would not remain the case for long. At around noon on Tuesday, the 26th of August, local newspapers reported that one of Mike's friends had been searching a random area of land off the Happy Valley Loop when he discovered an abandoned ATV. The road in question led to the street on which a farmhouse was located and was relatively close to where Mike had last been seen. There, they discovered an ATV perched on a hill, seemingly abandoned. When deputies arrived, they quickly determined that it was Mike's missing vehicle. Its location was around a mile from the farmhouse and had been parked in thick woodland near an abandoned cabin. When Matt and Andy arrived, they told officers that their father should not have been in the area. The ATV being there made no sense to them, and their original suspicions began to change. They had previously believed Mike had been in an accident. Now they feared their father had met another, more untoward fate. Investigating officers examined the ATV upon discovering its location. It had been parked up a steep hill in an unusual way, as though whoever had been driving it had jumped off in a hurry or abandoned it at the last minute. It had been left in high gear, with the kill switch deactivated, but the ignition was still active. There were no signs of damage to indicate it had been in an accident. Attempts to lift fingerprints from the ATV's handlebars failed, potentially due to the weather having washed trace evidence away. The site presented a strange conundrum. Not only had the vehicle been left in an odd location, but Matt and Andy stated that Mike would never leave the ATV with the ignition on. Doing so would drain its power, which would have left him stranded in the middle of what was a very remote region. How the ATV had come to be left in such a place remained a mystery. A day later, on Wednesday the 27th of August, Blount County deputies and 50 community volunteers fanned out to search the area around the ATV. The area was thick with vegetation that bled into the confines of the national park, resulting in acres of dense woodland and uninhabited forest. The area was so remote that the sheriff's office had to set up a mobile cell tower so the search crews could effectively communicate with each other. Tracking dogs were used to pick up scent trails from the ATV, but none could be detected. A park ranger also led a search team to a nearby cave. Mike's family claimed he knew the cave's location and would occasionally visit. But when they investigated the area, no clues could be found. Mike's whereabouts continued to remain elusive. Over the next few days, the search parties failed to obtain any further information about Mike's fate. The weather eventually subsided, but its effect on the landscape had significant effect on efforts to find Mike. After several days of no new leads, the sheriff's office decided to call off the search for Mike on Friday, the 29th of August. Several months passed before the search for Mike was injected with new life. In January 2009, emergency workers resumed the search of backcountry land near the family farm. The fall season had cleared leaves and foliage in the surrounding area, which may have unearthed previously undiscovered clues. An item of clothing was found near the site where the ATV was discovered, but later examination determined it did not belong to Mike. Furthermore, bones were discovered in a fire pit located close to the ATV site. A subsequent laboratory analysis, however, concluded that the bones did not belong to Mike and were in fact bovine in nature. Despite the renewed search efforts and the offer of a $15,000 reward, no information could be found. The searches were called off, their objective unsuccessful. What happened to Mike Hearon in August 2008 still remains unknown even now, 14 years later. The strange circumstances around Mike's disappearance and the almost complete lack of clues have inevitably led to great speculation over the years. This has ranged from the possibility that Mike willfully disappeared to murder, bear attacks, and even Bigfoot involvement. I will highlight several of these theories, but I of course encourage you to seek more information. The first distinct possibility of what may have happened to Mike is that he chose to disappear. Some have suggested that Mike may have been depressed and chosen to walk away from his life. The global economic crisis in 2008 may have unfavorably hit Mike's business, leading to intense stress and turmoil. Officers considered this possibility from the outset of their investigation, but his family resolutely dispute this theory. Matt claims that his father was very close to his mother and family, and both he and Andy had recently got married, which had delighted their father. They did not consider there to be any rational possibility that Mike had left of his own free will. Additionally, Mike was not known to suffer from depression, and his sons did not observe any financial difficulties in the business. It is possible these issues may have been present without Mike's family being aware, but the theory is certainly not without contention. There is also the possibility that Mike may have had an unfortunate accident whilst riding his ATV. He may have been going too fast or hit an object that ejected him from the vehicle and caused a significant injury. Perhaps Mike then wandered off into the neighboring woodland in a disoriented state and succumbed to the injury or the elements. Those familiar with ATV vehicles suggest that the ignition switch being left on indicates that Mike may have fallen from the vehicle whilst riding, and the vehicle continued on its trajectory before resting where it was found. But if this were the case, there should have been signs of damage on the ATV. If that were the case, why has his body or any trace of him not been discovered? Finally, we must entertain the prospect that Mike may have fallen victim to criminal activity. Indeed, this is the theory both Andy and Matt believe has the most plausibility. People have speculated that Mike may have set off for the property whose grass he intended to mow, spotted something untoward, and intervened in the events. Online speculation has suggested that the dense woodland around the Great Smoky Mountains National Park may provide good cover for marijuana growing operations and other drug-related activity. Could Mike have happened upon such a location and been killed for his silence? Both Andy and Matt have stated that Mike was the sort of person to intervene in illegal activity, and he had no tolerance for such behavior. But if this were the case, it is odd that no evidence has been found to lend credence to this theory. There is also no evidence, or at least none that I have seen, to confirm that criminals use the area for illegal activities. Also, if somebody had murdered Mike, why did they stash the ATV in a location that could be discovered as opposed to simply destroying it? Or could Mike have leapt from the vehicle in a hurry, having just seen something that he wanted to investigate? The possibility is a curious one to ponder, but it is not without issues. Closing. The mystery around Mike Hearon's strange disappearance has persisted for the last 14 years. His family have sought closure for over a decade, but sadly none has been forthcoming. After their father's disappearance, both Andy and Matt organized an annual effort to locate their father, dubbed the Hike for Mike. The walk covered trails near the family farm in Happy Valley and lasted for several years before it came to an end. In the years since their father vanished, Andy and Matt have become fathers themselves. Matt now has 2 children, aged 6 and 8, whilst Andy also has 2, aged 7 and 9. The Hearon family has been expanded, but Mike Hearon's absence has continued to plague those close to him. Both brothers have attempted to tell their children about their grandfather, but it has been difficult to express their confusion. Over a decade has passed since Mike's disappearance, but his family's desire to have closure has never lessened. Perhaps one day they may finally have the answers they have sought for so long. Mike Hearon's disappearance is an ongoing case, so any information is eagerly sought. Mike was 51 years old at the time of his disappearance. He is white, approximately 5'10", and around 185 pounds in weight, with dark brown hair and hazel-colored eyes. He has a tattoo on his lower back, an appendectomy scar on his abdomen, a scar between his thigh and knee, and another scar on the back of one knee. He also has a snake bite on one foot, which is slightly smaller than the other. At the time he disappeared, he was last seen wearing a faded red t-shirt, khaki cargo shorts, and sandals. If you have any information, please contact the Blount County Sheriff's Office Crime Hotline at 865-273-5200. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want more content from me, and until next time, have a good one. See ya.